Hey, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate reading your comments on YouTube and social media, and now you can submit your questions on my website as well. Head over to lifelessonswithdrbob.com and click the question tab at the top of the page or the one on the right side of the screen, and let us know what's on your mind. I'll answer your questions at the beginning of each episode, so let it rip. Let's have some fun.
Welcome to another episode of Life Lessons with Dr. Bob, where you'll hear highly accomplished and fascinating guests talk about the challenges they've overcome and the winning mindsets that have led them to great success. And now your host, Dr. Bob.
Welcome to another episode of Life Lessons with Dr. Bob. My guest today is Nitsana Darshan-Leitner. Nitsana is an Israeli attorney, human rights activist, and the president of an organization that's based in Tel Aviv, Israel, that she founded in 2002, 20 years ago. It's called the Israel Law Center, or in Hebrew, Shurat HaDin. Shurat HaDin is an independent, nonprofit organization that's unaffiliated with any political party or governmental body. Its primary mission is to go on the offense against terrorists. Shurat HaDin's battlefield is not the land or sea or sky, but courtrooms in Israel, the United States, and in Europe, where Nitsana and her colleagues litigate on behalf of plaintiffs who are victims of terror. In addition, they often sue organizations to block terror financing and to combat lawfare and BDS. And because of the increasing importance of social media, they also file suits to fight jihad and anti-Semitism on social media. Shurat HaDin's motto is very simple: bankrupting terrorism one lawsuit at a time. She and her associates have filed civil suits against Hamas, Islamic Jihad, the PLO, the Palestinian Authority, Hizbollah, Iran, Syria, Egypt, North Korea, and in addition, Shurat HaDin sues banks such as UBS and the Lebanese Canadian Bank, which are complicit in helping finance terror. Many of her cases allow victims of terrorism to fight back, and she has won and collected judgments of hundreds of millions of dollars in compensation on their behalf. Former Prime Minister of Israel, Naftali Bennett, said, and I quote, "Speaking as someone who has spent the past 6 years in the Israeli Security Cabinet, I can confidently say that Shurat HaDin is a strategic asset to the security of Israel and to its ability to defend itself." Nitsana, as you'll see, is smart, shrewd, and relentless in her mission to make Israel's enemies pay for their crimes. Nitsana, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Bob. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Shurat HaDin fights terrorism on 4 different fronts: attacking jihad on social media, combating lawfare and BDS, blocking the financing of terrorist organizations, and bringing terrorist organizations, suing them on behalf of victims, and collecting cash awards for their families. Give me some examples of how Shurat HaDin has fought each of those, starting with fighting jihad on social media.
So it actually began in 2015, the beginning of the knife intifada in Israel. Young Palestinians were going to their mother's kitchen, grab a knife, and go and stab Jews. And where everybody thought they were just simply lone wolf, we realized that there is something much more beyond that. It's actually these kids getting excited to go and kill by the social media. Mm-hmm. Posts on Facebook, tweets on Twitter, videos illustrating how to kill and what you get as a reward if you go and kill on YouTube. So we decided to file a lawsuit against Facebook to get an injunction against them to block this incitement. Unfortunately, this lawsuit could not keep going because Facebook has immunity. The Communication Decency Act, Section 230, grants them blanket immunity from being sued in courts. So we thought about a different idea, which is actually a violation of the Anti-Terrorism Act. What Facebook is doing is providing social media services to designated organizations. And in the United States, no company is allowed to provide any sort of services to designated organizations.
Very
Banks,
true.
for instance,
Very good way of thinking about it.
Right. Banks cannot open bank account to Hamas or Islamic Jihad, so why should Facebook be allowed to open a page for Nasrallah or Yahya Sinwar? So we went and filed a lawsuit against Facebook on behalf of terror victims that were killed in the Knife Intifada, seeking $1 billion compensations. And these cases are litigated in court. Once again, Facebook claims that they are immune according to the Communication Decency Act. But slowly, we are getting in advance with these cases. We just had a decision given in the Courts of Appeal in a different case, not against Facebook, against Google, because we are suing Twitter, Google, Facebook. They all, unfortunately, do the same, help and assist the organization by providing them social media services, by allowing them to use their platforms. We just won a decision that siding with us, saying indeed that the Facebook or Google or Twitter cannot be immune, cannot be recognized a non-publisher. They should be found accountable. So we're slowly making our way. We're doing it because there should be zero tolerance to terrorism on the internet.
Yeah, but these are the same organizations that typically ban or deplatform conservatives for just conservative thought. But they're allowing these terrorist organizations or future terrorists, not only allowing, they're giving them a platform on which they can publish hate-filled material and incite people to act and to commit crimes. Is that correct?
You're so right. Yeah. And indeed, we did an experiment. We wanted to see if Facebook really bans any incitement to violence on the social media. So we opened 2 pages. One page called to kill Israelis and one page called to kill Palestinians. And we posted
So you created these pages?
Yes.
Good. Great. I love this story. Go ahead.
And we post the same posts and the same images, just with one difference. Yes. One calls to kill Palestinians, the other calls to kill Israelis. And after 3 days only, we asked Facebook to take down both pages. Facebook immediately took down the page that called to kill Palestinians, to send us a fair message saying that this violates their community standards. But they left the Israeli page standing. They said the page does not violate their community standards.
And it was identical words, identical except for the headline.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. That is fantastic.
So if you're talking about conservative and you're talking about liberal,
right,
it's all up to them. They decide. They just decide. They make the decision according to their standards, according to their belief, their political agenda, what to take off, what to live on.
And as I understand it, the CDA, Community Decency Act, that was passed by Congress many years ago when the internet was just burgeoning, when it was just starting, the whole theory was that these organizations are simply bulletin boards. They can't control what's on the bulletin boards, and therefore we have to give them immunity from prosecution. But now they are acting just like publishers.
Absolutely.
They are making the decision of what's on that bulletin board and what's not. So the CDA should not apply to them.
Right. Today, they are very involved with the users. They are very involved with the content. They make billions of dollars promoting content that they detect, that they feel it's right for this user or another. Their whole commercial and financial infrastructure built on this algorithm that they control. So the same way they detect words and likes and content, they can find and detect the terrorism and incitement, and they can take it down. Therefore, the Communication Decency Act, which was perhaps a well-intended law 25 years ago is not valid anymore and should change.
It should change. Okay, tell me, that's an excellent story, and I hope you'll keep me posted on these lawsuits against these large internet companies. What about combating BDS, and give me some stories about that.
Well, I can give you two recent stories. One is Airbnb. Remember that Airbnb decided to agree with the BDS movement and to boycott Jewish homes in Judea and Samaria.
So in other words, if somebody had a home in Judea or Samaria, then they wanted to rent a room out or rent the whole place out, Airbnb wouldn't list it. Is that correct? Right.
Decided to delist them from their website. And they did it just because they agreed to the pressure of the BDS movement. The BDS movement, to those who don't know, is a movement that Israel's enemies decided to take on when they realized that they cannot beat us militarily.
Right.
When they tried all the wars and all the wave of terrorism, and they realized that they cannot destroy the Jewish nation, the Jewish state.
Militarily.
They decided to take...
Economically. So BDS stands for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. And boycott means don't buy anything from Israel, don't do business with Israel. Divestment is pressure on organizations that buy and sell stock, mutual funds, to sell off anything associated with Israel. And sanctions means to work through world organizations, the United Nations or the World Court, to hold Israel accountable for phantom crimes.
Exactly. Their goal is to single Israel, to make it a pariah state, and just to actually eliminate Israel, because their goal is not to call to a two-state solution. I don't know if you know, if you check their website, you check the words, they have a one-state solution, a Palestinian state.
Of course.
They want to exchange the Jewish state with a Palestinian one. So they put pressure on companies to boycott Israel, and Airbnb collapsed to this pressure and decided to delist Jewish homes from their website that are in Judea and Samaria. We realized two things. First of all, they delist Jewish homes only. They did not delist Christian homes or Palestinians or more Arabs or more any type other type of homes. And they did not delist, they claim they are doing it because they don't want to have houses in occupied territories on their website, but they did not delist other occupied territories in the world, like Northern Cyprus, like Western Sahara. So this is a clear discriminating act against Jews. And this is forbidden in the United States based on the Fair Housing Law. The Fair Housing Law prohibits discrimination when it comes to housing. You cannot not rent, for instance, to black people, or you cannot not allow Chinese people in your neighborhood. Same way you cannot treat Jews
But they would argue that the law applies to renting or buying in the United States. So,
right.
So you were able, I want to hear how you got it to apply to Judea and Samaria.
So we needed to find American citizens that rent their houses in Judea and Samaria.
So these are American citizens who happen to own property in Judea and Samaria, and they want to rent.
Exactly.
Oh, wow. So that allowed you to bring it in what kind of court?
In Delaware, where the headquarters of Airbnb, where they are incorporated.
Yep.
And 3 months into this lawsuit, Airbnb contacted us and wanted to settle the case out of court. They realized they are not going to win. They realized this is really a violation of the Anti-Discrimination Act, and wanted to settle this case. We reached an agreement with Airbnb, and Airbnb backtracked its policy and no longer have any intention to delist Jewish homes in Judea and Samaria.
Fantastic. And you may not be able to disclose all the terms, but at least they paid for lawyers' fees, I assume.
They did.
Okay, great. Give me another one.
Ben & Jerry's. Ben & Jerry's just decided they don't want to manufacture ice cream or sell ice cream in Judea and Samaria because once again they don't want to be involved in occupied territories.
No,
It's against
these are leftist Jews who basically hate Israel. They side with the leftists and believe all the propaganda that the left promulgates about how evil and occupier and colonizer Israel is. These are leftist Jews.
I agree.
Both of them.
I agree, right? That's true. So we came with this idea. We said if Ben & Jerry's does not want to sell ice cream in Judea and Samaria, we will sell Ben & Jerry's ice cream by incorporating Ben & Jerry's company in Judea and Samaria. And why we have a right to do so? Because we can actually take over the trademark of Ben & Jerry's in Judea and Samaria. According to the U.S. law, once you waive your right to the trademark in this area, once you announce that you have no intention to work in a specific area.
This is trademark law, and you actually you dove into trademark law to understand this, that if an organization ceases to use the trademark and says it's not over a 1-week period, but if it says we have no intention of using the trademark, then other people can claim it.
Yes, it's a territorial issue. You can't just register your trademark all over the world.
Right. Only when you're doing business.
Right, exactly.
So go ahead. So what happened?
So we told Unilever that we are going to take over their trademark, and we went and incorporating Ben & Jerry's company in Judea and Samaria. We received a warning letter from Unilever warning us not to take this and not to do anything of this sort. And we're expecting for them to come to court and confront us. Fortunately or unfortunately from our side, Ben & Jerry's reached an agreement, Unilever reached an agreement actually, with Avi Singer. He's a French rice in Israel. And the agreement says that you will be able to sell Ben & Jerry's ice cream in Judea and Samaria. So
Unilever is not, but he is. So he is manufacturing it in Israel?
Yes, he's been doing it for 35 years, and he will continue to manufacture ice cream of Ben & Jerry's in Judea and Samaria.
Labeled as Ben & Jerry's.
Yes, with some differences. You cannot have the label in English. You can have it only in Hebrew and Arabic. You can't use the flavors that Ben & Jerry's use, whatever, a little bit different.
I see.
But as you opened and you said that Ben & Jerry's, the people are leftists and haters of Jews and Israelis, they got very angry at Unilever for reaching an agreement with the Israeli agent, and they're suing Unilever. So the fight is not over.
I see. Even though Unilever owns Ben, they bought the company, but they're still...
because they let Ben & Jerry's to decide their politics over the ice cream. And I'll tell you what we are doing now is we are forming an organization called Students for Justice in America. It's equal to Students for Justice in Palestine.
Right.
And because we came and researched and found out that the land that Unilever, that Ben & Jerry's has its offices in Vermont, is actually an occupied territory. It was occupied from the Abenaki tribe, the Indians. So we are calling to Ben & Jerry's to vacate this land because they're occupied.
That's not going on the defensive. That's going on the offensive. Who thought of that? That is wonderful. You discovered that the land that their headquarters or factory in Vermont is based is occupied territory.
Yeah. So we writing a letter to Ben & Jerry's signed by thousands of students, Israeli students that care very much about human rights. And they demanding Ben & Jerry's to vacate land because justice and morals start at home.
Isn't that something? Now, are there any survivors of that tribe that you could find? That would be wonderful.
We're looking.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
To collaborate with them. We did not find somebody that is still in this country, but we are.
No, but even if you could find other American Indians, it doesn't even have to be from that tribe. They can support American Indian rights. Or I don't know if legally they could, but it'd be great to have American Indians help you in this law, or stand with you, or sign the complaint.
Right. So we are looking. We're looking. Hopefully, we'll find.
Story.
You can't tell Israelis to get out of Judea and Samaria because they're occupied, and you yourself stand on occupied territories.
Perfect. Okay. Any others?
It's endless.
Okay. Or do you want to move on to the next topic?
Let's move on.
Okay. What about stopping the financing of terrorist organizations? How have you proceeded with that?
So here we have the typical example of the Gaza flotilla.
Mm-hmm.
If you recall, in May 2010, there was a huge invasion into Israel done by boats. There's some boats, some pro-Palestinian activists wanted to breach the sea blockade that Israel had over Gaza.
Let's just review this. Israel maintains a blockade on the sea against Gaza to prevent arming of the Palestinian terrorists. That's basically what the blockade is for. Exactly. It's not to stop food shipments which come in by road or by railway or by trucks. So, and it's not to stop medical shipments. It's clearly a blockade of the port of Haifa, or that whole beach area of Haifa, of Gaza, so that friends of the PLO or friends of Hamas can't ship military equipment in. That's the reason for the blockade.
Right. And they have a right to do so.
That blockade has been in place for...
Since the Oslo Accords.
Okay, which is when?
1993.
Okay, for over 20 years.
Yes.
Almost 30 years.
Right. So some...
And even the UN hasn't said that the blockade is illegal, right? Doesn't say it's illegal.
That's true. Israel has the right to defend itself and has the right to keep its border closed. And right now, or at the time, Gaza is part of the overall Israel, and they have a right to do so, to block the terrorists from bringing in explosive and weapons and terrorists and train them and whatever. So these pro-Palestinians decided they are going to breach the sea blockade that Israel has.
The first breach of the blockade. Go ahead.
Right. It was 2010, and they rented a big boat called Mavi Marmara, a Turkish boat, and they all went and sailed from Turkey into Israel. Obviously, the Navy was welcoming this boat, and the territorial water of Israel, they asked the Mavi Marmara to stop, right? They told the activists, the pro-Palestinian people, please go home, go to where you came from. They all came from Europe, by the way. And the Mavi Marmara people said to the Navy, you Jews go back to Auschwitz, and refused to turn back. So the Navy sent helicopters to the air. When they laid, Navy SEALs climbed down.
I remember the videos.
Yeah. But the Navy SEALs was unarmed because they thought there were only human rights activists waiting for them on the boat.
Sure.
And when they reached the boat, they were almost lynched to death by the terror organization IHH, a Turkey organization that was, its activists were waiting for the Navy SEALs on the boats. There was a huge battle going on the boat. 9 of the terrorists got killed, and 9 IDF soldiers got severely injured.
Ooh, so they did have weapons, the terrorists.
Oh, yeah. There are pictures of this weapon, that the codes on the boat, hundreds of knives and poles and guns, and it really was scary. So these pictures of IDF soldiers beating up civilians were spread all
Supposedly
over the
civilians,
media.
yeah, of course.
And it caused a disaster to the state of Israel. Israel was forced to pay compensations, $20 million, to the families of the terrorists that got killed on the boat. Turkey rushed and filed a war complaint against Israel in the International Criminal Court. Dropped the relationship with Israel to zero. It was really a crisis and a disaster.
And I remember President Obama, who was president at the time, on a phone call, forced Netanyahu, who was the prime minister of Israel, to apologize to the president of Turkey. That
they had to sign a surrounding agreement.
Terrible.
Yes, it was humiliating.
That's
really
another sign that
humiliating.
Obama hates Jews and he hates Israel. He's a hater.
So the next year,
They thought they'd do it again.
Yeah, plan to do it again. And we in Shurat HaDin said we can't let it happen. We can't have another clash on the high sea with IDF soldiers. What can we do in order to prevent the boats from sailing? What all the boats need in order to sail that we, as lawyers, can stop, can block.
Right.
And we came with the idea of maritime insurance. All the boats need maritime insurance in order to sail, and no port will let any boat to leave without maritime insurance. So we sent warning letters to all the maritime insurance companies in the world. There were not so many of them, only 30, and warned them and told them that if they provide insurance to the boats that are participating in the flotilla, they are violating the Anti-Terrorism Act because they are providing services to designated terror organization. In the end, the goal of the boats is to help Hamas in Gaza, which is a designated terror organization. And if they do that, they violate the law, and they might be liable civilly and criminally in the United States.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's a scary letter.
Right. And did you have any, and I'll get more into this about government involvement, did you work with the Israeli government or the U.S. government or any, or you just came up with these ideas?
So we came up with the idea but later on we did collaborate with the Israeli government because what happened is that Lloyd's of London answered us immediately and say that indeed Hamas is designated terror organization in Israel, United States, Europe, and Canada. They have no intention to insure the boats. And if we give them the maritime insurance company, maritime numbers of the boat, they will cancel their insurance. We didn't know what the numbers they had, so we approached the Navy, and the Navy gave us the numbers.
Great.
And this is how we heard that 6 of the boats canceled the participation in the flotilla because lack of insurance. Mm-hmm. And then the Navy came to us and asked, what else can we do? So we came after the satellite communication services. This is the GPS and the internet and the telephone. Same thing. And then we heard that the biggest boat of them all, we read it in the New York Times, the Mavi Marmara, is canceling its participation in the flotilla because lack of insurance and other communications problems.
So you sent a similar, let me make sure I understand. You sent similar letters to the companies that provide GPS or communications saying, same story.
Right.
You're aiding terrorists.
There was actually, this came into a lawsuit because the company that provides these satellite communication services called Inmarsat refused to answer our letter. They said, we have no intention to cancel any services. We have an obligation, according to the UN, to provide it to all boats with no connection to what they do. So we sued them. We filed a lawsuit in Miami because they have offices in Miami. And 3 days later, they canceled the Mavi Marmara's communication services.
Fantastic. Great creativity and perseverance, which is very important. Perseverance means you don't stop.
Yes.
You keep on fighting until you win. You don't give up.
Right. So we had other tricks that we played on these boats, but the final blow was that we consulted with law firms in Greece, and we realized that every boat that wants to leave Greece has to fill up a voyage form. where they have to indicate which port they are leaving and which port they are going to. And we knew that none of the boats can fill in their destination as Gaza because Gaza doesn't have a port. So we sent a letter to the port authorities in Greece asking them to come and check all the boats that are waiting to set sail. First of all, if they're fit to sail, if they have insurance, if they have communications satellite services, and to check their voyage form. And the port authorities came and checked all the forms and realized that everybody put their destination Alexandria, Egypt. That was a fraud on the port authorities. They got very mad and impounded all the boats. And that afternoon, the organizer of the flotilla had a press conference in Greece saying that because of this lawful organization, Shurat HaDin, that spreads lies against them, they don't have a choice but to cancel the flotilla.
Without a shot being fired,
Right.
without anybody being hurt or killed.
Yes.
Fantastic.
This is the cleverness of the legal tool. You file a lawsuit
Lawfare. Yep.
and you just get a victory without shedding any blood. This is how we fight terrorism.
Very creative.
We fight terrorism in
Very
court.
creative.
We dry up the money. We dry up the source. We cut off their pipeline of the oxygen without one gunshot.
Tell me about how you've sued terrorist organizations on behalf of victims of terror.
So
'Cause
this
that's how
is,
you started, of course.
Yeah.
It was
So
to help the victims.
I started with in the beginning of the Intifada when I realized that we're going to see the same suicide bombings and what we see in the first Intifada, drive-by shooting, ambushes. We said that this time we really have to fight back, that this time Israelis should not sit still, idly by, and receive the attacks from the Palestinians on a daily basis and do nothing. So we wanted to set up as an example how to fight back. And since we are not diplomatics and we don't participate in the government and we are not soldiers and we don't have military wings, we are only lawyers, we decided to bring or take these organizations to court. We decided to try and to go after their assets, after their money, to go after their pockets, because we realize that money is the oxygen to the terrorism, and if you stop the flow of the money, you can stop the flow of the terrorism. We waited for the first case to arrive, and it was the lynching of the 2 soldiers in Ramallah.
I remember that. They took the wrong turn.
Yes. Wow. 2 soldiers just wind up in Ramallah, were lynched by the Palestinian policemen in the Palestinian police station in Ramallah. And since it was done by Palestinian employees, we thought that this case is a clear case against the Palestinian Authority. We can sue the Palestinian Authority because in any other normal country, the police and the state would be found responsible for such a horrible lynching. We filed a case, and then we filed more cases, and then we established Shurat HaDin to take more cases, and this is what we do since then.
And tell me, did that case settle? Did you get...
This case settled only now.
Wow, how many years is that?
22 years later.
And if you get a judgment, did you get a judgment? Tell me.
We got a judgment.
And you sue in Israeli court, I assume.
Yes, this case was in Israeli court. Along with the lynching case, we had 15 other lawsuits, and we won a judgment for 130 million shekels. It's a partial judgment. We're going to receive another 130 million shekels. This is how the court in Israel works. Doesn't matter. Overall, we'll have a judgment for around 300 million shekel, which is $100 million US, and we are going to collect it.
Well, that's another story, because winning a judgment, even in the U.S., doesn't mean you get the money. Then you have
Yes.
to collect on the judgment.
Yes.
So how do you collect against an enemy, money from an enemy?
So this one, the Palestinian Authority has assets. Part of the assets is actually collected by the Israeli government.
I see, on taxes that they're supposed to collect
Exactly.
from Palestinian workers in Israel, and that money is supposed to be handed over to the PA. So
Right.
you can attach those assets. You can
Yes,
get that
every
money.
month Israel collects $150 million
Ooh,
that tax money that belongs to the
it
Palestinian
collects
Authority.
taxes on behalf of Hamas, or
Yeah,
on behalf of the
of Palestinian Authority.
the PA.
It's custom tax, is VAT,
I
is
see.
all in income tax.
And you can attach some of that money.
Yes.
Great, okay.
And if you remember the case, the story of the 3 teenagers that were kidnapped.
No, I vaguely, tell us the details.
Yeah, this was a initiative of Hamas terrorists in Hebron that either were bored or decided that they want to help the Palestinian prisoners that are sitting in the Israeli jail, and they came with this brilliant idea of kidnapping an Israeli soldier. And they had a plan. They will buy 2 cars to kidnap the soldier, one car to kidnap him, and the other car just to move him to a different car to get rid of the first car, not to leave any trace of evidence, to buy 2 M16s because the soldier might be armed, and to buy 2 pistols in case something wrong will happen in the car. And to purchase all that, they needed 220 million shekels. Now we're talking about Palestinian Hebron, where the salary is 3,000 shekels a month. How they will get 220,000 shekels? There is a charity in Gaza called Al-Nur that funds all the terror attacks of Hamas. So they went to them and got 220,000 shekels in cash and bought 2 cars, 2 M16s, and 2 pistols, and went one Thursday night to Gush Etzion Junction waiting for a soldier. But it was Thursday night. It was the weekend. There was no soldiers. There were 3 teenagers that finished school and wanted to come home.
They were hitchhiking or waiting for a bus?
Hiking.
Yeah.
Late at night. And the 3 teenagers caught the terrorists in a surprise. These terrorists did not expect, 3 young boys jumping into their car. They decided to kill them right on the spot. And then they continued with their plan. They moved the 3 teenagers from the first car to a second car. They burned the first car, not to leave any trace of evidence, and found a place nearby in Hebron, buried the teenagers in the ground. An entire country held its breath for 18 days, looking for the boys until we found them dead.
Animals. These are animals. They could have used them as the hostages, but they just decided to kill them instead.
Yeah.
For the joy of killing.
Right.
So what happened?
So we filed a lawsuit against Hamas in the Israeli court and won a judgment for 38 million shekels. Now you can ask me, what do we do with the judgment against Hamas? Because how can you locate any assets of Hamas? That's different, the Palestinian Authority. Well, the Palestinian Authority actually gives money to Hamas despite the disparity between them and despite the fight, right? This is the PLO.
They were killing each other for a while.
Right.
Right.
When Hamas took over the Gaza Strip in 2006, they actually threw the PLO people from the window, from the buildings.
Killed them, yeah.
In order to keep control over what's left in Gaza, the Palestinian Authority keeps funding Hamas. They give them between $50 to $100 million a month. So we are just putting a lien on this money towards enforcing the judgment. And if the Palestinian Authority will refuse to pay us the money, we will go to the treasury in Israel, put a lien on the Palestinian Authority's money in the treasury, the same tax money, and collect the judgment. We will take 38 million shekels from Hamas.
That's $10 million about. A little
Yes.
over 10. Good story. Well, horrible stories, but at least we're fighting back and winning. Now, most of your efforts are on behalf of Jewish victims of terrorism, but that's not the rule necessarily, right? You've actually sued on behalf of Arab victims of terrorism.
Yes, we have. First of all, for instance, the war, the Second Lebanese War, when Hizbollah shot missiles towards the northern villages in Israel, they hit not only Jews, they hit Arabs, they hit Christians, they hit Druze, and we represent a lot of these victims in lawsuits against Hezbollah, against banks that help Hezbollah, against Iran that provided support to Hezbollah in lawsuits. We also represent Palestinians who collaborate with Israel, informants that give them information, people that help the security services that have been caught by the Palestinian Authority, have been tortured. Some of them have been killed. We represent them in lawsuits against the Palestinian Authority, both in Israel and the United States.
There's a very interesting story that I vaguely recall. I'd like you to fill in the details about Arabs in Israel who rushed to help some Jews who were victims of terror. So tell me about that.
Right.
Tell us
So
about
that was a terror attack, a horrible one of the Mark family. 2 parents and 3 kids were driving their car in Judea, and a Palestinian terror cell of Hamas just opened fire on the car and killed the father, injured badly the mother, and the 3 kids were sitting in the back of the car. The car turned over, and the Hamas gang was waiting to see what will happen. And what happened was that a Palestinian, his name is remained sealed, so we call him A, with his wife were driving nearby, saw the attack, saw the fire being shot at the Israeli car, stopped their car and rushed to help the Jews. They helped the mother. The mother got severely injured. They moved her to the car. They took the children. They took them to their car and called the security services to come and help. The Hamas gang saw these 2 Palestinians, A and his wife, recognized them, and went and told the authorities in the Palestinian Authority about them. Their life, the collaborating life, were in danger. They could not go back to the Palestinian Authority. The wife went back. The husband could not, the Palestinian. He went and asked for some help from the Israeli security services. And they did. They gave him a permission to stay in Israel for half a year and then extended it for another half a year. And then after a year, they told him, okay, you are, there is no danger for you in the Palestinian Authority. You can go back. After a year, it's enough. People forget.
Well, maybe not.
He could not go back. So we represented him in a petition that we filed with the High Court of Justice in Israel, demanding the security services to grant him a permanent stay in Israel. Don't give him, don't make him a citizen, but you can give him a permit to stay. It took, I think, a year of litigation in courts, but then Israel agreed to let him stay in the country.
What a nightmare. Yeah. It would be a real bonus to say, you're a hero.
Absolutely.
Despite all these, the dangers to your life, you helped save Jewish Israeli lives. And they should give him a medal and give him Israeli
100%.
Citizenship even and put it in the newspaper. Yeah. But trying to force him to go back where he'd be killed. He'd be killed.
Yes. Yes, and they did. They went to his brother and harassed him. The Palestinian Authority went to his brother, and they went to the wife and harassed her. Yeah, of course, he was in danger. He could not go back. But this was a really foolish decision of the part of the.
So you won the case, and so
we won
he's
the
in
case,
Israel,
and now
stay?
he's working in Israel. He brought his wife and his kid, and they're all living nicely in Beersheba, one of the towns in Israel.
Great story.
Listen, we have to show our gratitude to those who help us.
No question. Out of the blue, he happened to be there, and he. Right.
And who saved the life of the family.
Now, very often, the cases like the flotilla require lots of details and information which isn't generally available. Even to lawyers, it's hard to find. Even with Google, it's hard to find.
Right.
So do you get assistance? Tell us about the assistance you get, if you can, from various government agencies. Are they always Israel, or does the CIA help you and other organizations and the like?
Look, the whole inception of Shurat HaDin was done because of the Israeli Mossad. When we filed our lawsuits in the beginning, as I described, the lynch case and other cases in Israel and the United States, we were doing it as private lawyers. Mm-hmm. We just felt that there is a need to fight back, and we do it privately. However, after 2 years, when we began winning in court, got judgment against Iran for $180 million, got a lien on the lynch case for 64 million shekels, an unprecedented decision, and victories in court, we were approached by a secret unit in the Mossad called Harpoon, headed by Meir Dagan, the legendary head of the Mossad.
Right.
That had the same goal as we did, fighting terror financing. It was a special unit that Meir Dagan asked to form that will tackle the infrastructure of the terror organization. They also realized that if you want to dry out the source of the terrorism, you have to dry out the source of their money. Mm-hmm. They approach us and say, perhaps we can collaborate. They can give us evidence that they accumulated in their operations, and we'll take this information, it should not be wasted, and use it in our operations in court. Great. We couldn't do it as private lawyers anymore. We established Shurat HaDin, and we took this evidence and filed more cases against the Palestinian Authority, against Iran, against Syria, and against banks that provided financial services to the organization. Arab banks, Lebanese banks, Chinese banks. Now, all this information about the Palestinian Authority, about the banks, came from Harpoon.
From Harpoon.
Came from the Mossad. Mm-hmm. We did not even know that there was a bank, Lebanese Canadian bank, or Bank of China, or any of this sort. They came to us, they gave us the information, and we filed these lawsuits in court.
And the lawsuits, is the goal to get settlements from them, or just to warn them so they won't do business with those organizations?
Both.
Yeah, I see.
Both. Mm-hmm. Our lawsuits sent a shockwave through the international banking system that no bank agreed anymore to open bank account to a designated terror organization.
Great. Okay.
Banks closed down accounts that they had for some charities that they were suspected by helping terror organizations, and no bank agreed to operate in terror zones like South Lebanon, like Gaza. We won on two grounds. We warned the banks no longer collaborate with terror organizations, and we got compensations.
In addition.
To the victims. Mm-hmm. These cases allowed the victims to fight back and to get some measure of justice.
The need for your services, for Shurat HaDin services, is increasing, clearly increasing. What are you planning to do to address that increase in need? You have to grow.
Well, we try to train the next generation. We have law students that we run internship programs for, from United States, from all over the world, from Israel, training them, teaching them what to do. We have seminars for lawyers to come and teach them how to fight BDS, how to fight terror financing, how to fight in the International Criminal Court. Additional area that Israel is facing, all these blames for being apartheid state and violates human rights and being a war criminal. All these allegations have to be countered, have to be faced, and this is for lawyers, for private lawyers to join the fight, because the Israeli government cannot do these cases. The Israeli government cannot sue other governments, cannot sue a terror organization, cannot represent itself in the International Criminal Court. It's only for private lawyers. Private lawyers have no restraints there, don't have political interests, they don't have international treaties that are signed up, they don't even have to be politically correct. Their hands are untied. They can fight with all means, with all tools to safeguard the Jewish state.
Well, there is evil in the world, and there always will be. We are all have to be thankful for people like Nitsana, who devote their lives to fighting evil and winning. And talking about winning, to date, Shurat HaDin has been successful in freezing over $500 million in terrorist assets and has collected $300 million in compensation for the victims of terror. It's an amazing story, and Nitsana, you are an amazing woman.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending time with me today, and thank you so much more for your successful efforts over the past 20 years fighting terrorism in the courtrooms of the world in order to make the state of Israel safer for all of its citizens.
Thank you, Dr. Bob, once again for inviting me.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this episode of Life Lessons with Dr. Bob, please subscribe and you'll be automatically notified of future podcasts in the series.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Life Lessons with Dr. Bob. If you enjoyed these interviews with some of today's most influential thought leaders, please follow and rate the show on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget, you can also watch each episode on YouTube as well. We'll see you next time.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate reading your comments on YouTube and social media, and now you can submit your questions on my website as well. Head over to lifelessonswithdrbob.com and click the question tab at the top of the page or the one on the right side of the screen, and let us know what's on your mind. I'll answer your questions at the beginning of each episode, so let it rip. Let's have some fun.